picture of this formula? Maybe. If that button worked. There it is. I shouldn't have taken a picture of the formula. Now the program is crashing. You can highlight it. That's what I was going to do next. I'm going to highlight that formula. So here is a formula that figures out how long it's going to take you to pay off something. And this is where hopefully I can show you a few tricks to save thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars in your lifetime. All right? And if everybody in this class, because they paid attention, saves $20,000, $30,000, that would make me very happy. So, how do we do that and how does this work? Well, a person borrows $15,000 to buy a car, but you can only afford to pay $300 a month. Why do they have things like this in place? Well, often a person gets a job, right? And the job is going to pay them money. But in order to have that job, you need a vehicle to get to the job, or maybe the job that you're doing involves driving around to places. You need a vehicle, but you don't have enough money for the vehicle. So then things are in place so that you can borrow money to get the vehicle. But the places that are borrowing that money want to make money as well. So they charge you an interest rate that's compounded. So in this case, you have borrowed $15,000 to buy a car. Your payments are $300 a month. Interest rate at 6% compounded monthly. And again, all of these things would be explained to you in the question where to put them in and how to put them in. So we set up our equation. We're solving for n. N is in the exponent. And once again, I'm going to take my purple pen out and put a box around that exponent. So we have to do some preliminary math, rearranging to get that part by itself. So I'm going to start by multiplying both sides by 0.06 over 12. I get 75. So I still want to get this by itself. Order of operations. Next, I'll divide by 300. And now I don't need those big square brackets. I'm going to move the 1 over by subtracting. And this one we have to be careful with. Here's our power that we want to get by itself. When I move the 1 over, there's still this negative sign in front. I haven't got the power by itself until I get rid of that negative. I can do that by either multiplying by a negative, dividing by a negative, moving things to either side. But either way, it's not until I get this power all by itself, then I can use my log loss. So again, all of that work, half a mark. Now I can take the log of both sides. I can get 2 marks for this step at once. Bring the exponent out in front. Here's a 2-mark step because I took that exponent and used my log law and brought it out in front. Now to get n by itself, I have to divide by the negative and the log. We're going to type this into our calculator and see what we get. Log of 0.7 divided by negative log 1 plus 0.06 divided by 12. And we push enter. 57.680. You need 58 payments. What they would actually do is charge you 57 full payments and 1 partial payment. So our last payment would be a little bit less. In fact, we can figure out, if I take this answer and I times it by 300, because that's how much each of your payments are, how much are you going to pay for your $15,000 car? And you end up paying $17,304. This, I think, mathematically is an advantage that you're going to have, is you will know what you're actually paying for something. Okay? It's important to know when you pay that interest rate on your car that you're paying an extra $2,304. But you need that car to get your job, so that probably makes sense for you. But be careful, because there are a lot of things out there disguised to get you to pay way more than you're supposed to. And there's actually some scary stats. I once read that the average American who spends $100 on their credit card, how much do they actually pay for that $100 item? And this is an average. So lots of people pay exactly $100. I don't know if you know how credit cards work, but basically you get a credit card, and what's really nice is you can buy something even if you don't have the money. And you don't have to pay for it till the end of the month. So I want to buy a $100 item. I use my credit card. Bleep. I get the thing. And then a month later, they send me a bill in the mail saying, by the way, you owe $100. If you pay that $100 right away, that $100 item costs you $100 a month after you paid for it. Or depending on whenever your payment is due. Not a bad thing. And often credit cards also give you incentives. Sometimes they give you cash back. Sometimes they give you points. But if you don't pay the $100 at the end of the month, then they charge you an interest rate. And credit card interest rates are usually around 18%, which is quite high. So high that overall, on average, the average American pays $300 for every $100 they spend. That is not a good investment at all. Okay? Right? Find a pair of shoes you like. They're on sale. Regular $200 for $100. You don't have the money, but you buy them with your credit card because it's such a good deal. And you end up paying $300 for them. Was it such a good deal in the end? No. So we're going to look at how we can use our app here to figure out this question. So, what did we have? We had an interest rate of 6%. The present value in this case is negative 15,000 because in a loan, they have given you the car. It is as if they gave you $15,000. Anytime you take money, actually, anytime you get money, this is going to be positive. Delete that. Anytime you get something, it's positive. So you get $15,000 because you get the car right away. You are making payments of $300. That's negative. And in the future, you don't want it to be any more money. We wanted to know how many payments this would take, so you can go alpha solve here. We get the same 57.680 that we got on our calculator. Okay? But let's say this was your credit card and it was 18% instead of 6%. You bought your car with a credit card and you're like, I can't afford to pay it back at the end of the month. But the thing that credit cards get you with is they're like, don't worry. You can't pay the $15,000. You only have to pay $300. You're like, sweet. This is nice. I got a car and I only have to pay $300. Well, how long is this going to take you if you paid for this with your credit card? Alpha solve. 93 payments times 300. Now you're paying $28,000 for your car. Ouch. Okay? Was this worth it for your job? Maybe not. Maybe your job didn't pay you enough. So, first thing with credit cards to be aware of is the interest rate is really, really high. Credit cards can be very good because they can build your credit, which allows you to borrow money to buy a car later. Because they say, oh, you have a good credit rating, you've had a credit card, and you've been able to pay it off. We're willing to give you more money now to buy a car because you've shown a track record of paying things off. Okay? And the credit cards like it when you pay it off most of the time, but they really like it when you forget once. Even one day late. One day late, they're like, perfect. Now we can take your money and lots of it and charge you really, really high interest rates. So, recommendation. Definitely get a credit card and learn how to use it. But 2, don't spend money you don't have. If you're like, something's a really good deal, but I don't have the money, but I have my credit card. You are going to pay way more for that than you think. If you can, with a credit card, make sure that you always pay it off at the end of the month. Sometimes you can even set things up with your bank. Like with my bank, I have an extra, what's called a line of credit, which is an extra amount of money that I can get, and I only pay 5 or 6% on that. So if ever I don't have enough money for my credit card, if I pay it with that, at least that percentage is less. So I have a backup plan if I ever spend more money than I actually have. So this can be important because you're going to spend extra money. The car in the end, what was it? It was an extra $2,000. That's not so bad for buying a car. But next we are going to look at, I'm going to do another example with this same one. You can already circle the questions 7 and 12 if you want. But the next example, and we'll use our calculator for, because this is where I feel I can help you save tens of thousands of dollars, is because a bigger thing than a car that you're going to buy is a house. So next we're going to look at buying a house and how that works, and how much money you're going to pay in interest and what it looks like. Okay? So, let's say you're buying your first house You're buying something smaller, something older, something cheaper because you don't have a lot of money. And let's say that house, after you do your down payment, you still owe the bank $300,000. So probably you had to save up, you probably had to save up around $50,000 or $60,000. You bought a $350,000 house. You had a down payment of $50,000, and you still owe $300,000 to the bank. Interest rates for houses, right now, let's say it's at 4%. Well, let's go back a couple of months when it was at 5%. You want the future value to be zero. The Canadian government actually sets it up that mortgages are not allowed to compound interest more than twice a year, which makes a little bit of a difference, but I showed you the other day that the interest rate is the biggest. Okay? And most people, when they go to buy their house, they do it over a 25-year amortization. So that means it's going to take you 25 years to pay off your house. What this program can do here is an interest rate of $5,000. We want to know how much is this house going to cost us. If we want to pay it off in 25 years, I can go alpha solve, and my payments are $1,744 per month. How much are you going to pay for this house when you're done? You're going to do this 300 times. Ouch. Your $300,000 house is going to cost you $523,000. We'll write this number as a starting point. $523,000 over 25 years. That's a lot of money. Okay? The first thing that I want to teach you is that when you're doing this, make sure you do your homework and try to find the best mortgage possible and negotiate and attempt to get something better, because the interest rate is the biggest thing, right? A lot of people don't know this. They're like, okay, I've always worked with my bank. They offered me 5%. Perfect. Let's go for it. But even if you were like, you shopped around, you still want to go with your bank, but you shopped around and you found another place willing to give 4.5, you could probably go back to your bank and say, I found someplace else that's willing to do 4.5%. Well, what does that, like, a half a percentage? Like if you had 67.5% on your test, and I give you an extra half a percentage, now it's 68%, you'd be like, woo! No difference, you feel like. In fact, most people feel like a half a percentage is no difference. But if we did this, our payments were $1,700, that half a percentage changes them down to $1,660. Times that by 300, $498. Look at that, half a percentage. We've already saved $25,000. That's a lot of money. And we can save even more. So what I want to show you today is how you in your life can save money, just understanding how interest rates work and understanding how your loan works. Chances are you don't have $200 at the end of the month to put away in an investment that makes you money, because you're going to be buying things that you owe money. But if I can show you how to pay those things off in a way that saves you money, that can be huge. So, getting that interest rate down, 4.5%, 5%, can be huge. So really study the interest rates and mortgages and try to make the best decision to get it as low as possible. So that's step number one for saving us money. Step number two that people sometimes don't know about. So you could, when you buy your house to begin with, You're probably just a couple of years into your job that's paying you a lot of money. And usually people buy a house, they're like, oh, that's as much as we can afford right now to pay for our groceries and everything else is $1,600. Okay? But with any job, the longer you're at a job, you get raises and your salary goes up and you're making more money. So you have a choice. I'm making more money. I could buy a whole bunch of new shoes. I could go out for supper more often because I have more money. Those are all options. But another thing that people don't know is that you can actually increase how much you pay on your mortgage without penalty. So here I'm paying $1,660, but I find out, you know what, actually, because it was like almost $1,800 with the 5%. I reduced it to 4.5, but maybe I could still afford the $1,800. So now instead of paying $1,660, I decide I'm going to pay $1,800 instead of the $1,660. This will mean I'm going to pay it off sooner, so I can go to the end and I can go alpha solve, and instead of 300 payments, it's 40 payments less. So not only will I be able to, almost 40 payments is like 3.5 years. 3.5 years earlier, I'm going to pay off my whole house. But now if I times this by 1,800, I'm now down to 468. Just saving myself, by paying a little bit extra per month, I saved myself another $30,000 in interest. We are now at $55,000 less than we began with, just by making a few changes. Another change that some people make is instead of paying monthly, I cut that in half to $900, and I pay bi-weekly, every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks would be 26 payments in a year. Monthly is 12 payments in a year. Every 2 weeks means that there will be some months that you make 3 payments instead of 2 payments. How much of a difference does that make? Well, now when I solve this, it's going to be a much bigger number because you're making payments twice a week instead of 26 times a year. But if I take this amount and times it by 900, took off another 13 grand. We're now down to $445,000. This is amazing how much money you can save in interest over the period of a mortgage. Talk to your grandparents, because your grandparents have lived through a lot of years of mortgage rates. And maybe some of them will remember the 1980s. The 1980s interest rates went crazy. They went up to like 18%, the same as credit cards. So if you had a 25-year mortgage in the 1980s of a house worth $300,000, now that would be a very beautiful mansion in the 1980s. You have to remember that. But people actually would be like, I can't afford to buy this house because how much is this $300,000 house going to cost you at 18%? $1.3 million. That's not a good investment. Okay? Houses generally are good investments because they are an asset that appreciates. Some things get worth more with time, some things get worth less. Most vehicles get worth less, right? the car that I bought 5 years ago is not worth as much as it is. Like now I'd sell it and I'd get less money. Okay? But houses increase in value. So that's something that can be very, very helpful. So here's just a few things. The interest rate is huge. If you can get that interest rate down low, and that's something that if you spend 8 hours all day and you only saved 0.5%, that 0.5% saved you 25 grand. I would do a lot of really probably bad jobs for an 8-hour job and get paid 25 grand. I'd probably stoop pretty low. That's a lot of money in 8 hours. And this isn't that hard of work.